Westfield.
It's been WWE for over 20 years now, so anyone getting its name wrong these days isn't being cute, they're just ignorant, but I instantly digress. WWF went through a genuinely massive change from the mid to late 1990s, and one console saw the brunt of that change in action. While games based on Stone Cold, Ahmed Johnson and Kwang made their way to a bunch of different devices through the 90s, it was the PlayStation that saw the most WWF-based releases from 1995 to 2000. 6 games, 2 of which were exclusive. And in that time we saw the WWF shift from a cartoony free-for-all misaligned with the wants and needs of its now older fanbase to the world-beating fed of rattlesnakes, red viscous liquids and naked Midians. That thoroughly pleasant conceit established, let's leave the intro bit of the script behind and have a look at WWF's mid to late 90s journey through the lens of the original PlayStation. Beginning in the heyday of WWF's new generation, WrestleMania: the arcade game was less a technical wrestling showcase. In fact, it wasn't even a wrestling game like a ton of 8 and 16-bit WWF precursors on older devices than PlayStation. No, WMTAG, that's WMTAG, absolutely rode the zeitgeist, combining the likes of Mortal Kombat with NBA Jam before painting it all with a thick dollop of Lex Luger, Bam Bam Bigelow and Bret Hart. It looked stupid, frankly. Genuinely it looked silly. But 2 things. 1, it fit with the larger-than-life superhero theme of WWF in 1995, as well as fitting the general gaming landscape of the era, so it didn't really look that daft in the context of the time. And 2, well, it was bloody good fun. It knew what it was, it said as much in the title, and it played a damn fine arcade game. Yes, it was limited, yes, the AI cheated its arse off just like you'd expect from a penny-pinching arcade game, and so, yes, I too was cheating in some of the footage you're seeing here. But WMTAG came together by being exactly what it intended to be. Light, forgettable, daft fun. It wasn't where we were heading with WWF on PlayStation, and of course it saw multiple other versions as well as the Sony home port and the original arcade version, but just to remind you, I only really care about the PS1 for the sake of this video, so sorry SNES fans who want to see the version with only 6 wrestlers on it. But WMTAG was good, and it's still fun. But it wasn't a proper wrestling game. It is weird that it took so long for a proper wrestling game to hit in the PlayStation generation from WWF. Other companies did them, and WWF had done proper wrestling games before, slower paced ones with more moves and so on, like Royal Rumble Raw and the others for Mega Drive, SNES, 32X, what have you. But WWF didn't rush back into that approach for the new generation. The new generation of games consoles, I mean, not the WWF marketing term new generation. Instead, they did WMTAG, then they did From Mr. WrestleMania to Mr. In Your House, this sequel to Midway's original skipped the arcade version and was left entirely to the team behind the console port's sculptured software. The result was, well, not great. Bad, actually. Really bad. A genuinely awful game. Whereas the previous game built on a half-decent arcadey fighting game by throwing WWF and some wackier elements on top of it, In Your House started with the wacky. Emphasis on whack. All the follow-up had to do was be by the numbers, but instead it ended up being a haphazard mess of daft nonsense massively overtaking the core appeal of a shallow but fun fighting game. Projectile attacks like Shawn Michaels' bicep pose, power-ups and power-downs strewn around the ring, hilarious individualised arenas for each wrestler. It was very much a WWF game based on the WWF of 1996, the garbage pre-Attitude years. Special mention to the super pins too. See, in WMTAG, The Undertaker had a fatality. It was only in the arcade version, though you still see claims it's also in the Mega Drive port, and rumours persisted for years that all wrestlers might have fatalities. They didn't. They did in Your House. They were called super pins, sure, but you did drop shit onto the prone body of your opponent, and I'd say that tends to be a pretty fatal event. God, it was such a weird, bad game. Fortunately, a new developer was about to enter, and a new attitude was about to be formed. While ACCLAIM was still in charge of WWF games in this era, the studio didn't stick to its guns and, dare I say it, actually learned from the mistakes of In Your House. A brand new approach to the Fed on TV, the Attitude Era, led to a brand new wrestling game, made for the home market, made to be played for more than 10 minutes at a time, and made to engage with the newfound rabid audience WWF television had gathered for itself. The result was WWF Warzone, the first proper WWF wrestling game on PlayStation. Ported to N64 and Game Boy, but again, we're talking about PS1 here. Warzone made efforts to simulate wrestling rather than just making it a straight-up fighting game, an approach we'd already seen take hold in games with WCW and New Japan Pro Wrestling licenses, and in titles from developers outside of Acclaim's sphere of influence. More on that in a bit though. Warzone was well received, a breath of unexpectedly fresh air for WWF. The action mixed your basic battering with fighting game style inputs for your grapples and slams and special moves. It was infinitely more complex than One Tag and In Your House, and infinitely more satisfying as a result. And, of course, presentationally it took a massive step up into the modern era. 3D graphics, entrance music, commentary, speech from the wrestlers themselves, it all made a difference. The Attitude Era made a difference too. Stone Cold Steve Austin, the early days Rock, Mankind, The Undertaker's more modern Naughty Warlock incarnation, and plenty of others. Oh, Ken Shamrock. They were all the greats of the late 90s. Warzone also featured Shawn Michaels, who had sort of retired by the time the game came out. Ahmed Johnson had left the WWF, but nobody cared. Most interestingly to me, the wrestling nerd, is that WWF Warzone featured both Bret Hart and the British Bulldogs some 8 months after they left the Fed following November 97's Montreal Screwjob. The only thing more of a huh than that would be if AEW's Fight Forever, still yet to release as I speak these words, were to feature an Izzy Isn't He Fired CM Punk, but I digress again. Warzone pushed WWF games forward, it did. Unfortunately, it was neatly refined into the same underlying game, just with a lot more going on. A lot more wrestlers, a lot more modes, a lot more options, a lot more everything. Tornado tag matches, lumberjack matches, gauntlets, I quits. It felt like a real step up from Warzone insofar as the first game worked fine, but now we have plenty of accoutrements around the game bit to make it all that more engaging and entertaining. Creator Wrestler was improved, career mode was improved, it was just a proper series of sequel-style improvements in every sense. Though, admittedly, Shane McMahon being on commentary for some reason meant a bit of a step back. And as soon as matches became anything beyond one-on-one, it was an instant exercise in futility, as seen here with a terrible Creator Wrestler version of Bret Hart being battered by Paul Bearer and company. But Attitude was a good sequel. It was a genuine step forward from Warzone, a refinement and improvement in many ways that were needed. While it didn't tinker with the core mechanics very much at all, something that would have harmed the series were it to have continued,
ECW Hardcore Revolution and Anarchy Rules.
But for a second game in a new franchise, WWF Attitude was all it needed to be. I'm gonna go out on a limb here. WWF Warzone and Attitude get unfairly shat on these days. Yes, later releases blew Acclaim's latter efforts out of the water, but these were what we had at the time and they were fun. They've aged, they don't hold up, there's plenty of stupidity to them, but in the late 90s they were appreciated and they made a difference. They helped the wrestling genre push on and grow. The bigger problem was, of course, that WCW license I mentioned before. There were WCW games on PS1, but they can do one. No, the N64 was where the real difference makers lived, as made by ACCLAIM. This meant that from a historical perspective, Warzone and Attitude never had a chance. Something else did though. Something away from Acclaim. No, it wasn't on a par with Aki's games on N64, I know. But WWF Smackdown! Marked the beginning of a series that, despite name changes and developer changes, is still going to this day. This Space Year 2000 debut was the first WWF game to release solely on PlayStation, and it was the first one to, well, do whatever it is Smackdown did. What Smackdown did do was have a place, and that place was down to two things. One, it wasn't the Acclaim games. Much as I have defended them in this very video as not as bad as they're remembered, they still weren't specifically good games. Smackdown was a hell of a lot better than Warzone and Attitude, a fast-paced, characterful mix of brawling and fantastic WWF-style presentation. And second, while no, it wasn't the Aki games, Smackdown was very much its own thing, and very much a fun thing. This is the point where I was going to say Smackdown wasn't technically its own thing, as it was based on Yuke's 1999 budget release The Pro Wrestling, but it turns out that Japan-only release was based on the original Smackdown prototype and includes all the wrestlers from Smackdown, so that ruined that paragraph of the script, didn't it? Well. Smackdown was simple and quick-paced, possibly too quick considering people didn't stay down for any real amount of time, but it operated with just enough complexity to keep things ticking over for you when you put in the hours. Smackdown was a breath of fresh air for WWF on PS1. It offered plenty of modes, plenty of talent, plenty of, at the time, great entrances, because you got to see the Trons, a career mode that was a lot of fun. Yeah, Smackdown was great, and definitely deserved a sequel. Thing was, nobody expected that sequel to land 8 months later. Not a joke or an exaggeration, the original Smackdown released in March 2000, Smackdown 2 hit in November 2000. Can you imagine how much the internet would explode were that to happen today? But we were young and dumb back then, and we didn't mind. If anything, the first Smacky D felt like a bit of a prototype to Smacky D DOS's wrestling game What Done It proper. More wrestlers, more match types, more creation options allowing proper wrestler modifications, stables to be made, movesets to be modified and taunts to be magicked up. And of course more of the wonderful season mode. It was in that season mode where I and my friends found most of our fun, playing a 4-player story spanning decades and seeing my created wrestler forced into a seemingly endless feud with Viscera that I just couldn't get out of no matter what I tried. Until we removed him from our season, that is. Was season mode complex? More so than the first game, yes, but in real terms, no, not really. But it let you play indefinitely, it let you play plenty of ever-changing stories, and it let you lose your hard-earned heavyweight championship to Billy Gunn in an embarrassingly quick-to-finish cage match. No footage here because it happened a quarter of a century ago, but safe to say that match is burned into my brain retina. Smackdown 2 Know Your Role was a fabulous game. Rough around the edges and nowhere near the finished product, it nonetheless showed the path for WWF games to come. They just wouldn't be on the original PlayStation anymore, and soon enough wouldn't even be named WWF. But over 5 years and 6 games, we saw the future of WrestleFolks in gaming form. Thus we conclude the journey through WWF on the original PlayStation, a series of peaks and troughs, but honestly, it was mainly peaks. Only In Your House was genuinely bad, and even if those Acclaim games have aged poorly, well, Smackdown's not aged well to be fair. They've all aged quite badly. So is the conclusion that WWF games on PS1 are all shit? No, I won't go with that. They definitely offered a fun journey over the years though. Thanks go out to my patrons on Patreon whose support allows me to Hulk up in a way that wasn't covered in any of the games in this video because Hulk Hogan wasn't in any of them. I'm going to go chuckle softly to myself about the fact I mentioned WrestleMania 2000 and No Mercy by name at this point in the video and most people won't hear it, then we'll wow on in the comments about them being the best WWF games from the 95 to 2000 period and complain I don't know what I'm on about. No Mercy is the best wrestling game ever made. Bye! Diggity dog. Diggity dog.